Vanished, the national park mystery that defies logic. They called it a routine day hike. The weather was perfect, the trail well marked, and the group experienced. But when the sun set that evening, three of them had simply ceased to exist. No screams, no signs of struggle. Just gone. The phenomenon has a name now, whispered among park rangers and search and rescue teams who've seen too much: the missing 411. It's not a single incident, but a pattern, a horrifying constellation of disappearances across North America's wilderness that share impossible similarities. Cases where logic breaks down, where trained dogs lose the scent mid-trail, where bodies appear in areas searched a dozen times before, and the questions they leave behind are always the same. How and why? It started with a grandfather and his research. David Paulides, a former police officer turned investigative writer, wasn't looking for a mystery when he began. A woman approached him in 2009 with strange stories from Yosemite National Park, disappearances that didn't fit normal patterns. Cases the Park Service didn't want to discuss. What he found would consume the next decade of his life. Paulides documented over 1,400 cases across North America. Not random disappearances. These followed rules. Invisible rules that made no sense but repeated with disturbing consistency. Victims were often highly intelligent or physically fit. Many were found, if found at all, near bodies of water, miles from where they vanished. Their shoes and clothing were frequently missing or neatly placed nearby. But here's what kept him awake at night: the clusters. Certain locations swallowed people at rates that defied statistics. Yosemite, the Great Smoky Mountains, Rocky Mountain National Park, places where thousands visit safely every year, yet specific areas seem to pull people into oblivion. What was it about these particular spots? Why did experienced outdoorsmen vanish on trails they'd walked 100 times? The patterns were there, but patterns of what? Case file number 1, Jared Atadero, age 3. Location: Big South Trail, Colorado. Date: October 2nd, 1999. The morning was crisp and clear when the Christian Singles group began their hike. Jared, the youngest hiker, wore a bright orange jacket, impossible to miss against the autumn landscape. His father, a police officer, had let him join the group for this easy, well-traveled trail. Jared was walking with a group of adults. Then he was running ahead, just 50 feet. Witnesses blinked. He was gone. The search began immediately. Hundreds of volunteers combed the area. Helicopters circled. Tracker dogs were deployed within hours. The scent trail should have been fresh, obvious. The dogs found nothing. Not a single trace of scent beyond the point where witnesses last saw the boy running. How does a 3-year-old in an orange jacket disappear from a group of adults in broad daylight on an open trail? 4 years later, hikers found his remains on a mountain slope miles from the trail. The area had been searched repeatedly. Professional search teams had walked within feet of the location. But there was something else, something that made seasoned investigators go quiet. The clothing was laid out, too neatly. The bones showed no animal disturbance, no scattering pattern. One shoe was missing, never found. The coroner's report raised more questions than it answered. The position of the remains didn't match a fall. There was no clear cause of death. And perhaps most disturbing, how had every search team missed this spot for 4 years? What would you have done differently? Case file number 2, Keith Reinhard, age 54. Location: Silver Plume, Colorado. Date: July 2003. Keith wasn't a tourist. He'd lived in the small mountain town for years, knew every trail, every landmark. When he told his landlady he was going for a short walk on July 28th, she didn't worry. Keith was responsible, experienced, smart. He took nothing with him. No backpack, no supplies, just a short walk. They found his phone in his cabin. His car sat untouched. Search teams discovered one of his shoes, just one, on a trail he walked regularly. But Keith vanished completely. Here's where it gets strange. During the search, volunteers reported feeling disoriented in areas they knew well. Compasses spun erratically. GPS units gave impossible readings. One search dog, a veteran of dozens of rescue operations, refused to enter a specific section of trail, whining and pulling backward. What did the dog sense that humans couldn't? Weeks became months. The searches stopped, and then, 3 years later, hikers found human remains in an abandoned mine shaft nearby. Dental records confirmed what everyone feared. Keith Reinhard had been there all along. but the location made no sense. The mine was clearly visible from several points on the main trail. It had been marked on search maps. Multiple teams had walked past it dozens of times. The shaft wasn't hidden, it was obvious. So why did it take 3 years to find him? And more importantly, why would an experienced outdoorsman who knew the area intimately walk into an abandoned mine shaft in the middle of a summer afternoon? The autopsy provided no answers. No drugs, no alcohol, no signs of struggle, no clear cause of death, just silence. The search and rescue veterans will tell you, off the record, after a few drinks, that something is wrong with certain places. Not everywhere. Not even most places, but specific locations that seem to bend the rules. Case file number 3, Dennis Martin, age 6. Location, Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Date, June 14, 1969. The Martin family was playing a game. Dennis and his brother were going to sneak up on their parents from behind. The boys ran into the bushes, giggling. The parents counted to 10. When they turned around, one boy was there. Dennis was not. What followed was the largest search in the park's history. Thousands of volunteers, military personnel, tracking dogs, helicopters. For 9 days, they searched every inch of accessible terrain around the campsite. The dogs hit on a scent trail, then lost it abruptly. Not gradually, as scents normally fade. Abruptly. As if Dennis had simply stepped out of existence mid-stride. But witnesses reported something that didn't make it into official reports. Several people, at different times, in different locations, claimed to hear a guttural, animal-like sound in the forest that afternoon. Not a bear, not any animal they recognized. Park officials dismissed it. They had to focus on facts, not speculation. On the 6th day of the search, a key family reported something to the FBI that the Park Service tried to suppress. They'd seen a rough-looking man carrying something over his shoulder in the woods that afternoon, something that could have been a child. The man moved quickly, purposefully, away from the search area. The FBI investigated, found nothing. The sighting couldn't be verified. Dennis Martin was never found. His father spent the rest of his life returning to those mountains, searching. He died without answers. The case remains open, officially unsolved, though the Park Service considers it closed. What happened in those few seconds when Dennis ran into the bushes? If someone took him, how did they evade the largest search operation in park history? And if he simply got lost, why couldn't trained tracking dogs follow his scent? Some of them come back. That's almost worse. Case file number 4, Aaron Hedges, age 38, and others. Location, Crazy Mountains, Montana. Date, September 2014. Aaron was an experienced hunter, former Marine. He knew survival. When he told his hunting partners he was heading to check his elk traps, they expected him back by dark. 6 days later, search teams found him 12 miles away, hypothermic and barely conscious. He was missing his boots and his coat, despite freezing temperatures. But Aaron was lucid enough to ask one question that made the rescue team exchange glances. How long was I gone? When they told him 6 days, he became agitated, confused. He insisted only a few hours had passed, maybe one night at most. The medical evaluation showed severe dehydration and exposure, consistent with 6 days in the wilderness. But Aaron's timeline didn't match. His watch had stopped, frozen at the exact time his partners said he'd left camp, and he had no memory of 5.5 days. None. This pattern repeats across hundreds of cases. Survivors found with missing clothing despite cold weather. Missing shoes, always the shoes. Victims discovered in areas searched multiple times, as if they'd appeared there suddenly. And when they can speak, they report missing time. Confusion. Gaps in memory that shouldn't exist. Geraldine Largay, an experienced hiker, got separated from the Appalachian Trail in Maine in 2013. She had a cell phone. Her remains were found 2 years later, just 2 miles from the trail. Her journal showed she'd survived at least 26 days, texting desperately for help. Not one text went through. Not one. In an area with known cell coverage, how? David Paulides' research revealed patterns that logic can't explain. The intellectual cluster. A disproportionate number of victims have high IQs or advanced degrees, PhD students, doctors, engineers, people with exceptional analytical skills. Why would intelligence make you more vulnerable in the wilderness? The weather shift. In dozens of cases, storms appear shortly after the disappearance, severe weather that hampers search efforts and destroys evidence. storms that weren't predicted. That formed too quickly. The berry connection. Multiple victims were picking berries when they vanished, children especially. Why berries? What's the connection? The scent anomaly. Tracking dogs are 90% successful in normal circumstances. In these cases, they fail at a rate that defies statistical probability. They lose the trail. They refuse to track. They act terrified. The boulder field phenomenon. Bodies frequently appear near large boulder formations or granite outcroppings, areas with high electromagnetic readings, places where compasses don't work properly. The water proximity. If a body is found, it's almost always near water. Streams, lakes, rivers, even tiny creeks, always water. And the detail that terrifies rescue workers most, the reappearances. Bodies discovered in locations searched exhaustively, sometimes 20 or 30 times. Areas where search teams walked shoulder to shoulder. Where every square foot was documented, photographed, marked. The bodies weren't there, and then they were. Where had they been? Ask park rangers about the patterns. Watch them choose their words carefully. The National Park Service refuses to maintain a centralized database of disappearances. When Paulides filed Freedom of Information requests, he was told no such database exists. Each park tracks its own cases, if they track them at all. Why? The agency claims it's a resource issue. Creating such a database would be expensive, time-consuming, but they track traffic violations, parking tickets, wildlife sightings, every campground reservation and hiking permit, but not disappearances. Not the people who walk into their parks and never walk out. Search and rescue veteran David O'Sullivan raised questions about official numbers. His research suggested the Park Service drastically underreports disappearances. Cases that should trigger major searches are sometimes classified as voluntary departures or administrative issues. People vanish, the parks stay open, visitors keep coming. In 2017, a park ranger spoke anonymously to a podcast. We know there are places, specific areas where things happen more frequently. We don't talk about it. We can't. But we know. And when someone goes missing in one of those areas, we search hard and fast because... He didn't finish the sentence. Because what? Because the window closes? Because something else is searching too. Case file number 5, Tom Simmons, age 67, location Yosemite National Park. Date September 2022. Tom was a retired geologist. He'd hiked Yosemite for 40 years. When he didn't return from a solo day hike, his family wasn't immediately worried. Tom was self-sufficient, experienced, prepared. By the second day, they called rangers. The search began on familiar ground. Tom's route was predictable. He'd hiked it dozens of times. His car sat in the trailhead parking lot, exactly where it should be. Searchers found his backpack on day 3, neatly placed beside the trail. His water bottle was full. His emergency beacon was inside, unused. His phone showed full battery, but Tom's shoes were missing from the backpack. He'd taken them off, or someone had removed them. On day 7, hikers found Tom's body off-trail, in a drainage area heavy with brush. The location was impossible. Tom would have had to deliberately fight through dense undergrowth for no reason. The medical examiner found no signs of trauma, no heart attack, no stroke. He'd simply stopped, taken off his shoes, and died. Why? His family demanded answers. The park provided none. The case was closed as death by exposure, though temperatures that week never dropped below 45 degrees, and Tom was dressed appropriately. The family hired a private investigator. He reviewed the search maps and found something. Tom's body was discovered in a location searched on day 2. A trained search team had walked within 20 feet of the spot. They'd seen nothing. Explanations range from rational to impossible. Abduction, human traffickers or criminals targeting vulnerable hikers. But why leave behind usable electronics and supplies? Why take shoes? Animal attacks, bears, mountain lions, or other predators. But where are the signs of struggle? The blood? The scattered remains? Disorientation. Victims become confused and wander. But how do experienced outdoorsmen on familiar trails become disoriented in minutes? Environmental factors. Electromagnetic anomalies affect brain function. Some areas show unusual magnetic readings. Could this cause confusion? Memory loss? Underground caves. Victims fall into unmapped cave systems. But search teams use ground-penetrating radar. They detect large voids. The impossible. Paulides doesn't say it directly, but his research implies it. Something we don't understand. something that uses rules we haven't discovered, something that knows these mountains better than we do. Search and rescue teams have learned to recognize the indicators. They don't talk about them publicly, but they know: dogs refusing to track, sudden weather changes, electronic equipment malfunctioning, witnesses reporting feeling watched, disappearances near granite formations or water, missing shoes or clothing, victims found in previously searched areas. When these signs appear together, veterans prepare for the worst, because they've seen this before. They know the person probably won't be found, or if found, they won't be found alive, and they know the victim will have questions no one can answer. Thousands visit these parks every year, millions actually. Most return safely. They see beauty, peace, connection with nature, but some don't return. And we tell ourselves it's predictable: accidents, poor planning, bad luck. But the patterns suggest something else, something we don't want to acknowledge. There are places where the rules change, where our understanding of how things work simply stops applying. David Paulides has been criticized, called a conspiracy theorist. His work dismissed by officials who claim the patterns are coincidence, statistical noise, confirmation bias. But he keeps documenting cases because the files keep growing, because people keep disappearing, because families deserve to know. The National Park Service maintains its silence. Individual rangers sometimes speak up, then quickly stop. The official position remains: these are tragic accidents, nothing more. But if that's true, why won't they create a database? Why won't they acknowledge the patterns? What are they protecting us from knowing? Or who are they protecting? There's one more detail, one that Paulides discovered late in his research, and that changed everything. The clusters are growing, more disappearances, in more locations, following the same patterns. The phenomenon, whatever it is, seems to be expanding or becoming bolder. Last year, a wilderness guide in Oregon reported something to local police. He was leading a group near Crater Lake when he noticed something odd: fresh human footprints leading off the trail, just one set, barefoot, in October. The prints were evenly spaced, not running, not stumbling, just walking directly away from civilization into increasingly rough terrain. The guide followed them for half a mile before they simply stopped, not faded, not obscured by weather. They just ended, mid-stride, as if the person had taken one more step into empty air and vanished. The police investigated, found nothing. No missing persons report matched, no abandoned vehicles, no one came forward. Someone walked into that forest, barefoot, purposeful, and ceased to exist. The files remain open, the families still search, the mountains keep their secrets, and every year, more people walk into the wilderness. Most of them come back, but some don't, and we still don't know why.